The narrative begins by presenting a quiet street in a quiet city in New Jersey, in a neighborhood where everyone knows each other and enjoys the sunny day. We meet a woman named Denise and her son Brian, who asks to take a walk with his dog Scott. The father is named Greg, and he talks with a friend about their families. The eldest daughter is named Audrey and plays with the other neighborhood friends. One of them is Katie, who turns her attention to her boyfriend Mason. In the street, Greg tells his wife that he needs to be absent from the neighborhood event because the company he works for needs him. He apologizes for the occasion, which leaves Denise upset because it was supposed to be a family day and not a work day. However, the extra work would bring more bonuses and money for the family. Seeing the children in the street, Denise asks to talk somewhere else, which makes the children think they are having another couple argument. It is noticeable that both are having complications in the relationship, a fact that Denise reveals she has noticed in the change of behavior of their son due to the couple's small disputes, and asks that they resolve things soon. Greg says they will talk later and leaves the place. To relax a little, Denise goes to the house of Mrs. Rose and they talk a little. The young woman is happy with the lady's advice and grateful when Rose also offers help to improve her original book. Before Denise leaves, Rose invites her to go to the backyard and shows her a plant she had never seen before, which grew in the grass without her having planted any seed. Meanwhile, we see Brian with his friends walking through the neighborhood. At one point they stop and observe through the cracks of the wooden fence the teenager Emily, whom Brian admires. The scene changes to Denise arriving home, and Jacobson, her neighbor, calls her to question her about the dog having invaded his yard and dug a hole under the fence and dirtied the place with feces. Denise regrets it and says she will contain the animal from now on. However, Jacobson threatens the dog's life, which makes Denise angry and say that if he takes extreme measures, she herself will set fire to his house. A few hours later, Greg arrives home and asks his son for help. Later, the family has dinner peacefully and they smile with the harmony between them. While everyone sleeps, unable to sleep, Denise uses headphones to concentrate and works on her book. Suddenly, a strong light hovers over the neighborhood, which makes the dog bark. Brian wakes up and sees the glow briefly. Upon hearing the animal's noise, he goes out to check what is happening, but nothing strange is outside the residence. The next morning, he asks if anyone else in the family witnessed the glow during the early morning, but no one saw it. Greg jokes, saying that it was the alien scaring his son. Then in this relaxed moment, Jacobson knocks on the door. He questions whether Greg's children are out of their minds to do what they did. Without understanding, Greg follows the neighbor to his residence and shows a large pile of feces. The family smiles at the scene, which makes Jacobson furious. Greg says that they have nothing to do with the problem, but makes himself available to help with the cleaning. Later, Denise goes to the library to research the plant that Rose found in the backyard. The librarian says that it is strange to see such a plant alive there, since the species went extinct more than 200 million years ago. They smile and believe that it is actually another type of plant. Meanwhile, in the neighborhood streets, Brian and his friends end up running into other teenagers who always bother the boy. The group flees on their bicycles, and Brian tries to hide from the oppressors. He is observed by Emily, who does not reveal his location, since he is in her garden. The night is rainy, and Denise continues writing her book, while Greg is finishing the pizza deliveries. Minutes later, when he gets home, he sees the light that Brian reported, and this time Audrey also sees it. The event ends up emitting a noise that leaves them deaf for an instant, and then the lights go out. The family gathers, and when he looks at the street, Greg sees that the rain suddenly stopped. They find the sudden event strange, but decide to sleep. However, before leaving the living room, they hear screams and think someone is in trouble. However, when they check outside, they realize that the street is empty and everything is in complete silence. Audrey asks her parents to call the police, but not wanting to scare them, Greg asks the children to go back to bed and sleep well, because the next day everything will be fine. The family ends up sleeping in the living room, and when morning comes, they discover that the power has still not returned. Looking at the backyard, Denise observes that the family dog got loose from the leash and that the animal will very likely cause problems for them later. When they are having a snack, Denise also discovers that there is no water. Greg says it must have been damage caused by the rain, and soon everything will return to normal. Still suspicious of the screams from the previous night, Greg goes out with Denise, and for safety he carries a baseball bat. The couple goes out to look for the dog, and comes across a burst pipe spewing hot water, something strange, since the supply came from cold rivers and lakes. Then, the two separate. On the porch roof, Audrey reads a book when she sees a neighbor leaving by car, and soon after hears a strange sound. She continues reading the book when a cat's meow echoes, and curious she goes to look where the sound is coming from. The noise came from the forest near the back of the block, and the trees move as if something large were moving them. Terrified, she goes inside the house, not seeing that the neighbor returned in the car scared by something and quickly entered the house. Greg, who continues looking for the dog around the block, also hears distinct and strange sounds. At Mrs. Rose's house, Denise knocks on the door calling her, but there are no answers. Then, she enters to see if the lady is all right, but has a sad surprise. Rose is lying on the floor, wounded with bites from some fierce animal that killed her and left tracks as it left. Frightened, she takes Rose's rifle and goes to check the backyard, but ends up coming across a vast prehistoric forest, something impossible to exist in this time. At Greg's house, his children become frightened when observing a large tail of an animal walking among the trees. Meanwhile, Greg walks through one of the neighborhood streets and hears trash cans being overturned. Thinking it is his dog, he approaches, but ends up seeing the shadow of a strange creature that emits a growl different from a dog's. Frightened, Greg runs and ends up being chased. He hides among the plants of a yard and sees the creature. It is a feathered Deinonychus, a species extinct for thousands of years. The creature smells the human and attacks him. Greg narrowly dodges among the garden plants and is saved by a shot that Denise fires at the prehistoric creature. The couple runs trying to warn the neighbors about the danger, but the creature attacks an unprepared woman. They head home and ask their children to open the door. Before being devoured by two other Deinonychus, their children open the door and they escape the attack. The creatures move away from the residence, and the panicked children question what is happening, and unable to explain the appearance of the creatures, Greg tells them to pack their bags. Then we see the family leaving in the car. Denise, driving, was going to the neighborhood exit, but comes across another part of the prehistoric forest. She then heads to the other exit, but comes across a large swamp with creatures. Again, she tries the other exit, but at this point, they discover that they are no longer in the present. A part of the city has been teleported to the prehistoric period and is in the middle of a forest with colossal creatures. The family does not understand, and the children become terrified, knowing that they are in the era of dinosaurs. They quickly return home and use pieces of wood to block all the entrances of the house. While they do this, the couple worries about the family's situation and how they will show calm at this moment to their children. Brian asks his father about their dog, and Greg reassures him by saying that the animal is smart and can take care of itself. When Audrey goes to leave some things in the basement, she calls her mother to show that the place is flooded. Worried, Denise locks the door and asks her daughter not to go in there. A few minutes later, they have a snack from what is still left and worry even more, knowing that they cannot go out to the supermarket. Outside the house, some Deinonychus are in the street hunting for something to eat in the trash cans. Suddenly, they hear a loud cooing sound emitted by a fierce creature approaching. The frightened small carnivores run away. Back at Greg's family house, we see everyone gathered in the living room. Brian asks his mother if the world has ended and if they are living the last moments of life. Denise, not knowing what to say, reflects a little and then says that the reality of what they saw shows that they were somehow mysteriously transferred to the past. The family is confused until Brian remembers the lights from the previous night, which they witnessed. Audrey recalls the studies of a great scientist and physicist who claimed that wormholes could take them to the future and the past, and also states that points of light would be ruptures in space-time, which created dimensional portals. The family at first disbelieves it, but seeing the reality of the facts, believes the narrative told by the daughter. Greg then says that they only need to wait for the lights to return, which will take them back home. Speaking normally, he is confronted about the people in the community being devoured, but only asks them to believe that God will save them. Later, night comes and the family seeks activities to relax. Audrey enters her father's car and listens to music, enjoying the closed acoustics of the vehicle while her parents talk in bed. Suddenly, a crash causes a great tremor in the area and alerts the family to the dangers. The tremors make them look through the windows to see what causes the shaking, and they see a colossal creature with fur moving among the houses. Suddenly, shots echo in the neighborhood, and Greg observes his neighbor Jacobson on the roof of his residence shooting with a pistol at flying creatures approaching his house. However, there are many, and when the bullets run out, he has no chance to return inside the house and is attacked by several pterosaur creatures from the family group of the Quetzalcoatlus. A few minutes after the attack, the couple talks about what they will do. Denise is afraid and frightened and questions her partner about what will happen to them. The couple ends up entering into a new argument, which ends up being heard by the children. In this tense moment, Brian hears the dog barking in the backyard. When he sees the animal, he discovers that the bark is in response to the intruder, another carnivorous Deinonychus, which soon continues chasing the dog. Fearing for the pet's life, Brian takes his children's bow and goes out through the bedroom window. Inside the bedroom, Audrey hears her brother's movement as he leaves the safe environment and becomes fearful upon seeing him outside the house. At that moment, he does not notice a herbivorous dinosaur being attacked by a carnivorous beast, a danger that is increasingly present near his house. A few minutes later, when Denise goes to talk to her daughter, she sees the window without protection and panics upon discovering that the children are not inside the house. Desperate, the couple gets into the vehicle and goes out looking for the two. Meanwhile, Brian walks through the block looking for his dog, and when he sees a reptile creature emerging from the backyard bathtub, he runs frightened, believing it to be a prehistoric albino titanoboa. Searching for the children, the couple comes across several small animals similar to turtles blocking the way on the road. Not wanting to run over the gentle animals, Denise changes the route. Before completing the path through the grass, the couple is surprised by a large Spinosaurus. Frightened, Denise tries to reverse the car, but the vehicle got stuck. The sound of acceleration makes the large carnivore crash into the car and push them into a residence. The attack does not stop and the creature almost bites Denise. In panic, the couple leaves the vehicle and exits through the other side of the house. Meanwhile, Brian runs through the lawns and is watched by a hidden boy. It does not take long, and Brian ends up being surprised by the boy, with whom he had an unresolved feud. The boy presses him against the grass and injures him, but the attacker's brother prevents the aggression from continuing. They leave him there, and soon after, Audrey arrives to help her brother. At that moment, they hear a scream. When they run to check, they discover it is Emily, trying to escape the attack of one of the Deinonychus. Unable to get close, Brian takes his small bow and manages to shoot one of the arrows, and manages to hit the creature, but without causing any damage. With the attack against Emily not stopping, Audrey approaches and drives the arrow in harder, which injures the creature and gives them a chance to run from there. They stop and talk, and discover that Emily is alone because her parents were attacked and killed. The friends lament the loss and comfort the girl. Back to the couple's chase, the Spinosaurus continues sniffing them, looking for a different meal. Back to the search for the children, Greg and Denise continue through the block, but there is no sign of the children. Upon hearing the thunder of footsteps from a herd, they take shelter inside the car. Then several smaller creatures appear running in despair, fleeing from something colossal and fierce. Denise is terrified, and the couple tries to comfort each other, thinking that they would die there. Luckily, the terror ends. When Greg looks to the side, they see inside one of the nearby houses the light that Brian reported having seen. Then, the two enter the residence and come across the spherical dimensional portal. However, the portal closes quickly, showing the couple that it stays open only for a few minutes. The hours pass, and, back to the young people, Audrey helps put bandages on Emily's wounds. and while they talk, they see the parents outside looking for them. They quickly go out and happily hug the parents and introduce the new friend who needs company. The reunited family is having a second of peace until they hear a deep grunt nearby. The adults ask the young people to go in, while they will check what caused the noise. In the other street, they observe a pair of Brachiosaurus having a romantic moment, and this scene causes laughter in the humans. Wanting to capture this moment, Denise asks her partner to get closer so she can take a photograph of him. Knowing the danger of a colossal step, Greg does not get too close. Then the family heads back home and walks through the block in silence. When they see a fire not too far away, they look, questioning the fact, and accuse it of having been them the previous night. Remembering the occasion and having found the portal, Greg reports that it is something that appears in random positions. So at nightfall they must climb to some elevated point in the city and look for a point of light. At that moment, a carnivorous Carnotaurus almost reaches the family, who in panic end up separating in search of safety. Unfortunately, Brian enters a dead-end garage and becomes trapped with the creature at the entrance trying to reach him. Luckily, he manages to open the glass window and goes with his sister trying to get away from the creature. However, the large carnivorous Carnotaurus will reach them soon. Luckily, Greg appears and draws the dinosaur's attention to himself. Denise does the same and shoots to draw attention, gaining space for her family to escape the beast. Unfortunately, she ends up becoming the main target and is almost bitten by the Carnotaurus, narrowly escaping because of the columns of the porch of the house she reached. However, without effective ammunition to kill the creature, the Carnotaurus will soon reach her when it destroys the columns. Luckily, at the last instant, Greg appears with the large hammer, and before the creature reaches his companion, he hits the dinosaur's injured paw. The beast turns toward the brave human and ends up receiving another blow that knocks it down. However, and unfortunately, Greg does not reach his companion because the beast attacks him, tears off his leg, and devours him immediately. Denise is stunned by the loss, but needing to save herself, she takes her children away from there. Minutes later, the family returns home and tries to console themselves, now without the father, a precious loss. While Brian organizes some things, the reptile creature he saw the previous night enters through the window and slithers to the lower floor. Denise is grabbing some supplies when the creature approaches her without her noticing. Luckily, Brian observes the large creature entering the residence and then prepares an arrow shot. The creature is a colossal prehistoric albino titanoboa, and before it devours Denise, Brian wounds the serpent's body, which makes it retreat. Panic soon settles in the house, and everyone seeks shelter in the rooms where they are. However, the creature goes directly to Brian's room and tries to force its way into the room. Seeing the danger to her son, Denise gathers courage and uses a knife to strike the creature to save her son. Fortunately, with the cuts, the creature decides to leave before it ends up being killed. Finally, with everyone safe, Denise takes them to the roof. There they see several species of small dinosaurs fleeing from the fire spreading through the forest. Denise looks for a safe place and observes in the elevated houses on the hill a distinct glow. Imagining it to be a new portal, she decides to take the children to the residence. Walking through the streets, they can do nothing when they see some humans being chased by the Carnotaurus. The family continues the route and soon reaches the residence where the portal is. However, it is at an elevated point, and they need to climb to the roof. Denise and the teenagers silently enter the residence and find no one, but they do not realize that Mrs. Waninum. Valeria is armed, locked inside the room, watching the shadow under the door, believing it to be the creature that devoured her companion. She remains silent, as does the group of humans, so as not to be detected. Denise then takes the teenagers to the roof and does not realize that there is a pterosaur watching them. They approach the portal, which closes and opens continuously. Denise then asks the children to jump. Everyone is afraid and suspicious about whether they will really return to the present. To encourage the friends, Emily jumps first. Encouraging the children, Denise asks Brian to go first. However, as soon as the boy jumps, the portal closes momentarily, which causes Brian to fall and leaves him injured on the ground. At this moment, the carrion pterosaurs fly over the area and go to attack Brian. Luckily, the family dog found them and attacks the creature, saving its owner, but ends up being thrown against the grass. Denise quickly leaves the house and drives the creature away. The family tries once more, climbs the stairs, and takes the injured Brian to the upper floor. However, they come across large Capersuchus. Unfortunately, there is no way out, and Denise considers sacrificing herself to clear the passage for the children. Before the worst moment, the bedroom door opens and Mrs. Valeria appears, shooting at the Capersuchus creatures. Unfortunately, she ends up being attacked by one of them and sacrifices herself to save the family. On the roof, the family tries to avoid the attacks of the pterosaurs and fortunately manages to jump into the portal. They are teleported to the present and fall into a swimming pool. The owner of the house does not understand the invasion and asks the group to leave her property. Then, Denise observes the photograph she took of her companion and becomes emotional as she remembers him. At that moment, Emily finds them and calls them to see where they are. They believed they had returned to the present, in a location a little away from the limits of the event, but soon realized that they arrived a few minutes before the event that will transport part of the neighborhood to prehistory. Emily goes down the hill to find her parents and try to warn them, while Denise holds her children so as not to get involved in this temporal collapse and not to meet their versions who, at that moment, are their past. However, she remembers what her husband did and decides to do something. She goes to the phone booth and calls him to make a delivery to the location where they are. With this, she would save her husband from the event and from the tragic death, giving him the new future. The order is accepted, and a few minutes later, the family reunites with Greg, who, upon seeing them there, does not understand the surprise. Denise says that she loves him and will explain everything later. In this family moment, they look at the city below and see the moment when the colossal dimensional sphere teleports part of the city to the period of the past. Where before there were dozens of houses, streets, and poles, now there is a primitive forest. The scene then changes to 2 years in the future, where the news reports tell about the day they faced hundreds of prehistoric creatures. However, the news reports also tell about Denise's family, who managed to save several people from the region shortly before it disappeared, making several phone calls through a phone booth and warning some residents about the imminent danger. Everything indicates that the writer managed to alter the fate of several of those people before they were transported to the past. However, by saving Greg, Denise apparently created a new temporal branch in which her husband remained alive. This means that the events Denise lived through may never have been erased. At some point in that fragmented reality, another version of her family may have remained trapped in the past, without Greg and without any guarantee of finding the portal again. If that timeline continued to exist, it is likely that none of them survived.